In the world of cars, no brand is more iconic and impactful than Rolls-Royce. We've seen them in great movies and great stories, and over the years we've had some amazing stories about Rolls-Royce and their cars here on VINwiki. So today I've compiled our top 10 that I hope you'll enjoy. I also hope that you'll check out today's video sponsor, BetterHelp. With the busyness of spring and summertime upon us right now, most people say that their anxiety and their stress is peak this time of year. I know for me, trying to balance work and all the obligations there with everybody else's family schedules starting to free up and talking about vacation and travel and everything else, it can get very overwhelming. And most of the people that turn to BetterHelp for therapy report anxiety as one of their main concerns. And 69% of those people say that within the first 6 weeks, they do see an improvement in their symptoms. So whether you're looking for help with depression, stress, anxiety, or relationship issues, something at work, whatever it is, the team of professionals at BetterHelp can help you live a better life. So check them out now at the link in the description below, or go to betterhelp.com/VINwiki to get the help that you're looking for. It is super easy to onboard. You'll take a quick survey, talk about what you're going through, and within usually a couple of days, they'll match you with somebody for whatever it is that you're struggling with. And if it happens to not be a great fit, it's easier than you could possibly imagine to request a new therapist, and there is no additional charge for that. And throughout the whole experience, their customer service team is there to help. They make sure that all of their therapists are licensed and qualified. And again, it's so easy because you can do it from your computer, from your phone, whatever it is that you're looking for. BetterHelp can help you live a better life. So check them out now at betterhelp.com/VINwiki, or click the link in the description below. You'll save 10% on your first month of therapy with VINwiki, and you'll find the help you're looking for from BetterHelp.
The previous owner was a strip club in Houston. I'm just as guilty of it as everybody else. I love to play on Facebook Marketplace. I love it. You know, if I'm sitting around and I'm bored or I'm on hold, I'm always on Marketplace. You know, it's like the jockey lot online now. And, you know, some of the ads are fun to read, and every once in a while you find a cool car on there. You know, I've bought gas pumps, signs, all kinds of things off of Marketplace. One Sunday morning, I was playing around on Marketplace. Just came back from Atlanta, and something caught my eye. A 1967 Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow in Covington, Georgia. And if you don't know where Covington, Georgia is in the middle of nowhere, and they did film the first 4 episodes of Dukes of Hazzard there, and it pretty much has not changed since then. Like literally, you remove the General Lee, it's still exactly the same. Dirt roads, trailer parks, and all. We actually drove past the Boar's Nest going to this dude's house. Well, saying house is in a very loose term, but driving to this guy's place, and he gives us the address. And he said GPS can't find his house. So he gives us the address down the street. He said, just keep going. It's the last trailer you will see. And that's going through my mind as I'm riding down the road to look at this Rolls-Royce. It's the last trailer you're going to see, you know, and I'm like, you know, like, damn, I was born in one of these things. I don't want to die in one, you know, whatever. So, and I got my buddy Tim Greer with me, and Tim is like that friend your parents warned you about. He's like the guy that any bad decision, he's going to talk you into it. And he's all about it. And Tim's a little bit older than me, so it's got like authority behind it. You know, yeah, I'd buy a Rolls Royce that don't run from a trailer park. Hell yeah, that's great. Let's go get it. So I recruited old Tim to go get it. So we put the trailer on the truck. Like I said, we're riding to Covington, Georgia. Last trailer you'll ever see. And we're riding. It took forever to get there. We finally pull in. It's getting dusty dark at this point. And it goes from a paved road to a gravel road to just straight dirt to we're just riding through somebody's yard, it looks like. And we just keep going straight, and there sits the biggest turd of a Rolls-Royce you've ever seen in your entire life. Finding a Rolls-Royce in a trailer park is a surprise in itself. The guy that owns a Rolls-Royce that lives in a trailer park is everything you would expect he would be. Guy comes out, he goes, here she is. It is, that's it, it's a Rolls-Royce. It is a silver over black. Rolls-Royce. It's got blue leather interior in it. Apparently it didn't start out silver and black. It had been repainted over the years. It was a light blue color originally. Had no motor in it. And he traded a zero-turn lawnmower for it. But in his defense, the lawnmower didn't run either. You know, walking around looking at it, and the car's straight. The car's got a great body on it. All the glass is there. You know, all the dash is intact. No engine, obviously. But the car, all the chrome, the stainless, the grille looks great. You know, and I'm like, I mean, it's not a bad car. I wouldn't have drove all this way. You know, even if it's a cheeseburger, I want to buy something in Covington, Georgia, you know, at this point. So we're walking around, and he goes, I go, what do you want for your little car? And he was asking $1,800 for this. And he says, I'm pretty firm on my price. And I love people that tell me that, because now it is my mission in life to get you as far away from that number as humanly possible. So I walk around a little more and I start nitpicking it a little bit, you know, and which was not hard to do. And then now it's getting really dark outside. And we have a car that doesn't run with my truck and trailer facing this car. So I was thinking in my head, how am I even going to load this turd if I do close the deal? I said, I'll give you $500 for it. He goes, I can't do it. He said, I'm firm on my price. I said, buddy, I said, tell you what, I think we're going to have to go. He said, would you give $1,200 for it? I said, no. We'll see you. We'll see. Getting in the truck. Tim's got his lip ran out. He was in love with it. Got his lip ran out. I go to shut the door. Guy screams out, hey, would you give $1,000 for it? Open the door. I got 8 $100 bills today. You bought it. Okay, so I back my truck and trailer 3/4 of a mile in the dark out of this place. Turn around, back down to the car. Well, the car doesn't run. It's a 50-year-old Rolls-Royce. It's heavy. It's been sitting. Tires were up on it, thank God. You know, I'm thinking, how am I going to load this thing? You know, so you kind of lean against it, try to push it, and this thing's not even really giving it all. Guy said, I can hook it to my truck. Well, the only problem is my truck's hooked to the trailer, so how are you going to do this? So he said, watch this. And he comes out with a strap, and it had to be 50, 60 feet long, the strap. You know, when a guy at a trailer park says, hey, y'all guys, watch this. 1, you know to break your camera out. 2, either he's going to do something extremely impressive or he's about to get himself a Darwin Award. He starts walking by and pulling up mailbox posts with mailboxes on them out of the neighbor's mailboxes, and pulling them up and laying them down in the yard in front of their trailers and laying them up. And he goes up, you know, 2 or 3 trailers up and does this. He comes pulling up with his diesel truck, hook strapped to the back of it, hooks the strap to the rolls. We put Tim driving right over the top of my trailer, and the Rolls-Royce was loaded with a strap. Just that easy, kids. So we strapped it down, paid the man, and we left. We stopped at the pilot station, which was right, the first lights we saw, you know, in public place, just to see how bad this thing was. People started walking up to it at the gas station. And like, this thing is such a turd, but cool at the same time. So here we are, and Tim's like a little kid at Christmas, you know, like, man, we could do this, we can do this. I'm thinking we can cut this thing in half, make a desk out of the front, make a couch out of the back. And then Tim, who is a gasser drag racing guy and all this stuff, he goes, you talk about make a bad drag car, a 67 Rolls-Royce gasser. And I'm like, yeah, it'd be cool, but I mean, I don't know. And then I'm not a drag racing guy, you know. I mean, I just bought it just oddity, you know. And, you know, he's just like, man, come on. He's aggravating me all the way down the road about it. The next thing you know, he starts texting my graphic artist buddy. And the next thing you know, the next day, I get emails from him of Rolls-Royces that are done up like gassers. This guy's drew up. And, you know, I mean, just like the wheels are turning, and I still don't know what we're going to do with it. I think the funniest thing is, you know, I just moved into a new house. And, you know, the neighbors, I don't know if they know how to accept me quite yet, because I'm liable to come driving up in anything. You know, whether it be a 57 Chevrolet or an old C10, or even drove the old camper truck to the house, left it parked in the driveway while we're in Vegas for a whole week just for them. You know, I mean, there's no telling what I might drive up in. And I come pulling up in this trailer and park right in front of the house with this Rolls-Royce in front of it. That one Monday morning, I was gonna pull it on, take it to the shop, and the guy that's the president of the HOA was jogging through the neighborhood. He goes, "That's a nice car you got there, Rob." I said, "Thank you. Thank you. It's a Rolls-Royce." So that was kind of fun. And right now it is taking up space at my shop sitting outside. It's the only Rolls-Royce in West Greenville now. And but a cool side story to the Rolls, this interesting actually, is the backstory. The car's got a phenomenal body on it, has no rust on it. The car actually came out of Texas. Started doing a little digging. The previous owner was a strip club in Houston, and they used it for a service car to pick up clientele. It's a classy place. So that's way all through the 80s and the 90s this car was used for. And apparently, I guess the old Rolls engine gave up the ghost, and she ended up in a trailer park in Covington, Georgia. And where it'll end up from here, we don't know. It might be a gasser. It might be the new desk for my office. I'm not sure, but that's the story of my $800 Rolls-Royce.
When it comes to a car like a Rolls-Royce, you know, he's building a P1 for frick's sake. Like there's no going back from this now. A Wraith should be child's play for Freddie. So my pal Freddie phones me and says, "Hey mate, I'm coming to England and I want to build a car. I'm going to be in town for a month. I need to find something special." So we found quite a special muscle car, or Japanese muscle car, should we say, of the Nissan variety. And then basically by the time he got into town, the deal fell apart and he sold the car to someone else, which was a bit devastating because Freddie had already had all his stars aligned. So basically, he said, "Sam, I've got a bit of an idea." He sat down with Matt and came up with this amazing idea of revitalising Sue, okay? And Sue, if you don't know, is the Marcus Rashford's donor vehicle, which Matt bought as a running and driving £95,000 perfectly good Wraith to get all the parts to fix the new car. So I completely understand that the Wraith that was Marcus Rashford's car was a facelift. So the parts on it were very, very expensive, which meant if you were going to go to the main dealer to buy parts, they're going to sell you the Mark II facelift parts as opposed to the predecessor parts. But with Matt's idyllic knowledge and the friends he has in the business, said that 95% of the parts would fit the old car as well as the new car. So it made sense for him to buy a parts car and ruin a perfectly good car. Well, after that, basically the boat was rocked in the YouTube world and everyone was shouting up and down to Matt to basically bring Sue back to life. I believe that's where Freddie came in, and Freddie flew in, had a chat with Matt and said, "Sam, can you help me?" I went, "Yeah, what's up, mate? I'm here for you anytime you want. I could do anything you need." He goes, "I need a Wraith." And I said, "Well, I told you about a Wraith I know a couple of weeks ago, but it was too late to give it to Matt, and it's a water damaged car. Hopefully the ECUs and the wiring is not completely ruined, but there is definitely seawater in the car, which that is the worst thing in the world. Salt water in a modern electric car is just going to be horrendous." So what we did was, I told him the price, he went back and forth, managed to get a deal done, and it was like 6 o'clock in the morning, I couldn't get there. So I phoned my buddy Chris Wrigley at the Wrigley farm, and I said, "Hey mate, can you go and get the car?" So he drove 3.5 hours, picked the car up, got it to me. Next day I loaded it on my trailer, I took it straight to Freddie. And I turned up at the pub, and I left his car on the trailer in the car park, and I went, "You all right lads, got a car outside for you." The best part of this, which you can't even make up, which means the stars have fully aligned, by the way, is the fact that this car, although slightly different strategic-wise in the paint, different levels, was exactly the same colour. Sue, I believe, was a 2-tone, and this was a 1-tone, but the parts that were stolen off it from the Marcus Rashford car could be repurposed and you wouldn't need to paint it. So Freddie's idea was to revitalise Sue by the use and the parts that I found in this water damage car, which would work out absolutely fantastic if you had a team of mechanics and not YouTubers that were floating all around the world and doing their own videos. So not only did I find the theme tune and write the theme tune, I had to rebuild the theme tune with the singer himself. So Freddie said to me, can you come up for a couple of days and give me a hand? And I knew this was coming, to be honest with you. There's only so much Freddie and his team can do. So I jumped in the car, drove 4 hours up there, and his amazing cameraman Tommy was there for morale. And basically me, Matt Jones, and Freddie ripped the suspension from the front and the rear of the car out. We ripped out all the steering, all the cross member, swapped the cross members from the Sue to the other one and back and forth, all the suspension legs, and basically went through every single nut and bolt to get it running and driving. And by the end of the 2 days, we pressed that button, it fired right up. The main problem you're going to have with these cars is part sourcing and pricing. I mean, I know the Wraith is probably one of the most expensive cars, and you can basically buy probably one of the cheapest ones on the market now for about £95,000 to £96,000. But when you're playing with cars that now haven't been damaged, at least when you put them back together, you know they're going to go back together. Every wire is going to fit that plug. Every bolt is going to fit. You're not going to be running around trying to find a certain plug or a certain part number, which Matt is very, very famous for cross-referencing bits. Like, this is going to be a plug and play job. And that's exactly what it was. I know there was a lot more hours needed after I left, but at least we got the bare minimum done. And Freddie is a little bit like Matt in the way that only the best is good enough. Anything less is just out the window. And when it comes to a car like a Rolls-Royce, you know, he's building a P1 for frick's sake. Like, there's no going back from this now. A Wraith should be child's play for Freddie. And it truly is just nuts and bolts, as Mr. Wiggly would say. It's about taking it apart, swapping it over and putting it back together. The only thing that everyone's been hassling me for the last 3.5 weeks is what's going to happen with the water damaged shell. Because the water damaged shell has an engine and transmission in. We don't even know if it runs and drives. It's obviously categorized, so it can't go back on the road. I mean, my idea would be to throw a big block Chevy in it, put a 4-link in the back, a 9-inch rear end, and just go do some frickin' donuts or throw it up a track, you know? That's my opinion on what I'd do with it, but there's lots and lots of people jumping up and down, and it's that fine line between Freddie here is in a position, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, this is not what's going on, is that he's bought a very expensive damaged car. And he's also rebuilding a very expensive parts car. But that parts car is also owned by Matt. So how do you get in such a way which you can rebuild Sue, which is probably a 100 grand car done? How do you rebuild that car and regain some of your funds for the parts car? And this is the same problem that Matt has had on a lot of his builds. The Ferrari 430, you can't just go out and buy another one for every nut and bolt that you're missing. But with the Wraith, you can do that. He's in a very, very lucky position. I mean, from now moving forward, the Marcus Rashford car will have a massive monetary value at the end, with being that it is so individual, the colour, the trim, the way it looks, the fame that is behind it, and now the even more famous Matt Armstrong is also riding the coattails. That car is going to have a value.
And all of a sudden you hear this loud boom and the crash of wood. In 1974, it was my senior year of high school, and I thought I was car crazy. My first car was an Austin Healey Sprite. My second car was a Morris Minor convertible. I wanted a job in the car business. I thought, what better place to go than to British Motor Cars of Seattle? So I went down to BMC, and I was all dressed up in my best gray suit from prom. Went in and I asked to apply for a job, and they took me into the general manager's office. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I don't have any experience. So he says, well, I've got an open position for a lot boy. And I go, okay. All right, sure. He says, but the thing is, you need to start on Monday. This was a Friday morning. And I go, I can do that. Now, I hadn't finished high school. at this point in time. I think it was March or April of that year, and I still had to go through several more months before the finishing. So I went home. I told my parents over the weekend, and they said okay, but I needed to finish high school, so I enrolled in night school to do that. So I started there in high school and as a lot boy, eventually became a service advisor. And so I was a service advisor for many years there until I went back to school. This one time, one of the salesmen went out in this brand new Rolls-Royce, Silver Shadow. And he took a customer out for a test drive and came back. And just as the car's turning the corner right in front of the dealership, the car just shuts down, just dies completely and rolls to the curb. Nothing works on the car whatsoever. Customer gets out, salesman goes in, grabs us. We all go out there. We're all looking at it. We're all checking it. We're trying to jump the car. It won't jump. Nothing works on the car. What are you going to do? You're right there in front of the dealership. The driveway into the dealership's probably 30, 40 feet away. So we grab a bunch of guys, the mechanics, and there's 5, 6, or 7 of us. Because the car weighs about 4,700 pounds. We sit there and we all look at each other and we say, okay, well, who's going to steer it? Well, we had one technician, he was from the UK, Jim, and he was all maybe 5'4" and 135 pounds soaking wet. And so we say, Jim, you get in and drive it. Okay, plus he was also a Rolls-Royce mechanic, so fine. So we all start pushing, and it's a slight 1% grade uphill and into the parking lot. And he's reefing on this huge machine, trying to turn the corner. And then you got to turn right into the dealership and then left up along the parking lot. And over here was this long cinder brick wall that separated the front of the dealership to the service department, and it went outside and went halfway down, so you'd hide all the service cars that were lined up there because you didn't want to show all the cars that were broken. So we pushed it all the way down there, and it's kind of still in a little bit of an uphill grade, but then it gets up to the point where you turn the corner on the hill and it flattens out. And now you're turning a little more right, and Jim's reefing on it, and you're headed towards the shop. But then all of a sudden, just before they get to the shop, it drops probably 2-3% down and then into the shop. So we get to the fulcrum point where now all of a sudden the momentum of the car is starting to take over and we don't have to push anymore. And so we all kind of go, okay, Jim, it's yours. And he goes in, and now his work bay or stall was just right off to the right of this. And it was a large room, probably you could fit 3, maybe 4 cars side by side across. And in front of that were these large workbenches, all made of huge 4x4 wood benches. And then they had their toolboxes, their snap-on toolboxes on either sides of them and that type of thing. That's where Jim was headed, was to his stall. So he's going down this hill, and we all kind of let go and see the car rolling, and we're watching it roll, and it's turning right. You're outside in the sunshine, you're looking in this dark building, and all of a sudden the car turns, and all of a sudden you hear this loud boom and the crash of wood, and all these tools are flying off the wall and everything else. And we're all look at each other. We run down there, and there's the Rolls-Royce, had gone right through the workbench, right through the cinder brick wall, and into the used car showroom floor. And we're all just aghast at what happened here. And Jim, are you okay? You okay? Yeah, I'm fine. And what happened? He says, there were no brakes. Nothing. I pushed the pedal. Nothing worked. Well, in production in that year, they had made a production change, and somehow they had changed the brake system to work with the electrical system. And when there was no electrics, there were no brakes. Well, that was Technical Bulletin BS 1844 that you were all supposed to memorize, that nobody ever did. And of course, he went right through the wall and everything else. And we're just looking at this and we're, oh man. So then the argument between Rolls-Royce and the dealership owner became a big deal. I think the owner, he ended up paying for it all. And I remember seeing that Rolls-Royce grill on the back of his desk in the corner, just sitting there as a memento to that day when Jim went through the wall. It wasn't his fault. Nobody blamed him, but it was just brand new Rolls right through the wall. This is in the early 70s, and this was a time when Rolls-Royce was trying to figure out exactly what the U.S. market was. At that time, that Rolls-Royce that went through the brick wall had an astounding price. I think the base price was $19,460, and that was all the money in the world for that. I think they probably only sold 4 or 5 at the most at that point in time. I remember the actor Danny Kaye, although it wasn't him, he had a company called Danny Kaye Promotions, and that was based in Seattle. And his manager at that point in time drove a new Rolls-Royce, and it was amazing. It was like, you got to remember, I was 18, 19, and this guy had come in. He was probably 31, 32, 33. And he was the first guy I ever saw in a full-length mink coat get out of a car. And I was just like, who is this? So yeah, that's after the car went through the wall, obviously it needed to be repaired. And they sent it up to the body shop that the dealership used. And I think that the owner at the point in time, he had a lot of friends and a lot of connections, and somehow the car, after it got fixed, disappeared. I think it went to California and eventually got sold, and nobody was ever the wiser.
I couldn't hold his helmet bag, but anyway, it was kind of neat to say you were co-driving with Phil Hill. Yates put his thinking cap on and got a lot of unsolicited advice from the competitors. He decided, all right, I'm going to do a time distance rally for 85. That way we can have a specific criteria for how we're going to give points. All we cared about was getting back with our buddies and boogieing around the country again. And he enlisted the aid of some heavy-hitting sponsors like Chrysler Corporation again, Uniroyal. Well, Chrysler wasn't as much in for the fun of it as they were to introduce new vehicles. Well, they came up with the LeBaron GTS Turbo as a new for 85 vehicle. So they enlisted the help of Phil Hill. There were 3 in his vehicle, and one of them was a serious rally competitor. And one of my patients was his own manager down here in Atlanta for Chrysler. When I was telling him about our exploits in 84, he said, well, we're trying to introduce this new car. Maybe I could get a second car for you guys. I said, hey, great. That'd be fine. I'm a co-driver with Phil Hill. Team. I couldn't hold his helmet bag, but anyway, it was kind of neat to say you were co-driving with Phil Hill. So they gave us a second GTS Turbo. As I recall, we had it fitted with some Recaro seats and a 5-point harness and a fire extinguisher. We put an ATL fuel cell in the back because I knew we were going to need some more range. The dealership hooked it up, and we had some problems with transferring from one tank to another, and it was a nightmare basically. But we didn't adjust the suspension, and we had no rally equipment. We had a stopwatch. That was it. So our ability to do this correctly was minuscule. But here we go. We started at Detroit, and Shirley Muldowney, the Top Fuel champion, was recovering from a terrible crash she had in Canada, and she was in a wheelchair. But she flagged us off, and we had, again, some fairly conspicuous decals on the car. Ralph Nader got egg on his face the first event, because we did all this, had no problems, and it made him look like what he was. And he was really serious in 85. He tried to get a court injunction to stop this event. He even enlisted accident victims who from traffic accidents in wheelchairs to block the starting line in their wheelchairs to prevent us from starting this event. As unbelievable as this is, it happened. The vehement outrage that he and his cronies up in DC were exhibiting, this is indicative of the severity of their anger. And of course, John Buffum who was a world rally champion and renowned, and had his navigator. He was in an Audi Quattro, and he was long gone and doing his thing the way it was supposed to be done. And if we'd had any brains, we'd have followed him, but we were just out having fun. But we were not serious competitors for this time distance event. Of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, we're going along about a buck 10 again, maybe. And back of us comes this Ford slick top. I think it was a civilian car. It was a county deputy in literally a souped up Ford. He caught us, and I thought, and he hit us a light. And he had one of those handheld kind of lights that you put on the dash. He got out, and he was kind of smiling. And he got and looked at our car. He saw the 5-point harnesses and the fire extinguisher. And, he knew we were serious drivers. We weren't just some yahoos. And he asked us a little bit about it and said, well, I'd like to do this sometime. And he let us go. He said, but you better watch out ahead because we got some state boys up there that are really looking for you. In '84, a fellow named Rocky Aoki, who started the Benihana chain and was an offshore powerboat racer, he had basically a NASCAR stock car with a big engine, and he put a 1959 Rolls-Royce Silver Wraith body over it. And he and his co-driver, Rocky, had a tuxedo, and Yogi Bear had a chauffeur's uniform, and they were going to run in '84, but they had mechanical problems. They couldn't start. So in '85, Rocky shows up, ready to go. He had a microwave in back of his car, and Benihana at the time was selling frozen dinners. So he had a supply of frozen dinners in the car, and he would microwave frozen dinners, and he would hand this out to one of the competitors. I'll never forget that. So that was a fun memory. Michigan was real serious about enforcing this. Somehow they had gotten a hold of the stages, the routes, and they had a guy in a barn with a radar gun. Well, through our CB conversations, we were able to negate that speed trap. We got to North Dakota. There was a guy posing as a hitchhiker, and he had his power pack and his radio in his duffel bag, and he was alongside the road posing as a hitchhiker, nailing us. Well, again, through the miracle of CB, we were able to counter that deterrent. We got involved in Montana in a blizzard. Some guys went ahead through the checkpoints and some didn't. We chose not to. We made a more direct route to Las Vegas. And we got to Las Vegas and had a pretty good time. Steve Wynn has quite a car collection down there, and he invited us to see his car collection. That was memorable to see that. And we had a nice party, all of us, which again was about the camaraderie. It was a car guy thing, and that's what was the draw for all this. And the radar detectors were pretty good. Now, Instant On was just coming into vogue. Instant On wasn't everywhere. And Jim Jager, he and his cohort invented Escort. It saved us a lot. But we ran in packs a lot, and we'd take turns running point. We'd have, somebody running point, somebody in the caboose there, and some guys in a rocket chair. The guy in the rear had to watch out for approaching, and the guy in front was kind of like jailbait, but we took turns, and it was like Russian roulette, I guess. California was really good at not using radar and getting us. When we left Redondo Beach, Carroll Shelby flagged us off. Chrysler was debuting a Shelbyized version of the GLH. He was there as the Shelby GLH representative or whatever, just a car guy that we all love and remember. And it was nice to be able to sit the night before and chat with him. And it was just a blast to be with a bunch of car guys at the Portofino. When we were going through Arizona, a guy came up in back of us. We had a backup light. One of our pet peeves was when we'd pass somebody and they'd give us the brights in '84. And I thought, how are we going to counter this? So I had the bright idea of putting a high beam backup light, a rally light, aimed backwards. And we had a brake cutout switch on the car. I was kind of fatigued. I hit the wrong light. Well, this was a policeman coming up back of us. So I hit the high beam. He really didn't like that. So I think I got nailed for 90 something. I can't remember now, but I got a ticket for that and something else about impeding the vision of somebody. I don't know. And they were fairly serious in Arizona, and some of our cohorts got nailed in Arizona pretty heavy, because coming down from Vegas, we were wanting to really have some fun, and it's open country and whatever. So But I remember hitting the wrong switch, and that light came on, and I thought, oh Lord, what have I done now? Because boom, boom, the lights came on. So we went on, and I remember we got down and went through Texas. Leonard Hughes and Paul Candies were a famous drag racing duo, and they had a shop in Houma, Louisiana. They had a big Cajun cookout there. Again, we went to Brumos in Jacksonville, had a good time there with Brian Redmond and his group. Then we went back up through Virginia towards Detroit, and all of us were amassing all these huge penalty points. We had thousands, and Buffum finished the race with 50 penalty points in his Audi Quattro. He won, of course, but when he got into Ohio, they were waiting for us again. And a bunch of guys got nailed. I didn't get a citation there. Buffum was hauled away in handcuffs. He was at the victory banquet, so obviously he got out of whatever they had him charged with. But they were serious about it, and I remember that. Here's a winner being in the pokey. That was fun. But we have really good memories.
The pressure inside the car was increasing with speed, and the doors were opening enough to get the switch that had the light to turn on, and then it would close. Because the light would go on and it would turn off. And it would what is going on? Last year was a tough year for me, for reasons we won't go into. And sometimes during those times, you need to get out and do something. And you need to do something that you don't plan, that you just participate. And my trip to Alaska with the Sway guys was one amazing getaway that happened. The other one that happened was going and doing my 13th Cannonball with the US Express. Ed Bolian calls, and when he calls, you answer, that he wanted me to come with him on that adventure. And I was like, okay, great. What are we doing? And he's like, let me put this out there for you. Rolls-Royce. And I'm like, okay, I'm interested. He's all, sheiks in the Rolls-Royce. I'm like, okay, getting better. He's like, and we'll just do the race kind of Jamie Farr style from the movie, and we're going to get a Rolls-Royce and make it happen. Now, I've owned some older Rolls-Royces, and they're not great cars. They are studies in deferred maintenance. And I'm like, well, we need to find a good one to make sure this happens. And then, of course, in my mind, I'm like, and in chic outfits. I'm like, how's this going to play? Like, I actually had to ask a lot of my friends, I'm like, is this racist? Like, to dress as sheiks? How will this be perceived? Halloween, you get dressed up like a Native American. That's cultural appropriation. Like, am I culturally appropriating Arabs? Like, and I live in California. Things are much more sensitive there about that. And I'm like, most people was interesting if you said, if I dressed up like someone from China, they'd be like, yeah, that's not a great idea. And I'm like, dressed up like a Native American? No, that's not such a great idea. I dress up like an Arab, they're like, oh yeah, that's fine. I'm like, that's an interesting delineation. Okay. Then my other fear was like, we go across the middle of America dressed as sheiks. Not that anybody's going to confuse my fair complexion with an actual person from the Middle East. But, you know, Cannonball is about risk, and especially if you're going to do your 13th Cannonball, you might as well keep it exciting. So why not? Ed ordered some great outfits, and all we needed to do was find the car. Ed sent a few, and I tried to give my advice, and he had a few looked at. And, you know, they have these hydraulic systems in them that were borrowed from Citroën that ran the rear suspension. And they also run the brakes, and they operate at like 3,500 PSI. And there's a massive pump on the engine, and it's got like a 2-gallon reservoir next to the engine. You have to keep filled with this special fluid. And what most people do after years of owning them and don't care, they end up filling them not with special fluid, but with whatever they can find. And that ruins the system. And all of those systems have to be rebuilt, like usually every about 12 years. And nobody can afford that because it's about 10 grand to do it, especially if you bought your old Rolls-Royce for 10 grand. So we had to find something that at least operated pretty well. And then Ed stumbles upon a fantastic example. Literally like a one family-owned Rolls that had been sitting for a few years. I think it was the grandfather took on world tours with it, Like he would fly it. He flew it to the Middle East to take a tour. He flew to the Pacific Rim and took a tour in it. Like he took it all over the world. And obviously somebody like that is going to take care of their car, even though it had been sitting for a few years and the family was ready to let it go. And the price was reasonable. And so Ed's like, I'm going to pull the trigger on this one. Now this car hasn't moved an inch in 5 years or something like that. And Ed, like at night, goes down to this place and picks it up. And he's like, he calls me. It was late my time in California, so I don't even know what it was, like midnight his time. And he's all like, I got the car. I'm like, great. He's like, yeah, I'm driving through the dark in North Carolina on a 2-lane road. I'm like, yeah. He goes, and there were a couple batteries in the trunk. I'm like, a couple of batteries in the trunk? He's like, yep. I'm like, that doesn't bode well. Usually if you have a couple batteries, it means one of them is bad. He's like, yeah, it's running right now. I'm like, well, whatever you do, don't turn it off. Because if it's running, let it keep running. So he drove and he stopped, and I think it did die, and he had to swap batteries. But he made it home, and it made its first trip. And he's like, so he took it out, and he had his guys go through it. He dumped a few $1,000 into it, which is very easy to do in an old Rolls-Royce, and got it operational. This is a right-hand drive car, which I love right-hand drive cars. And usually those are a little bit cheaper than the left-hand drive cars in the US, but you'll find out in a second why I like them. He got it, and it wasn't the white car from the movie. It was a two-tone car, actually beautiful looking in person, and a really nice interior. And things seemed to work in it, like operation. The windows went up and down, and electronics work, and headlights, all of them turned on all at the same time. He's like, all right, fly out and meet me in New Jersey, and we'll get ready, and then we'll head off for the US Express. Having run a bunch of cross-country runs, it's exhausting and just tiring and wears on you mentally to do all of that. To just show up is such an unusual thing for me. And I just flew in. Ed had taken care of everything. It was marvelous. And our third was Trevin from Sway, and this would be his first Cannonball, and not a bad deal for him, really. He's got two of the biggest Cannonball veterans on the planet. He's going to get to run with us, so he had a great time. And we met, we saw all the other guys, all the great cars. Fantastic event that was put on. The next concern is, will an ancient Rolls-Royce make it across the country? Now, I'd used one of those for Top Gear. I'd used one of those for a couple of shoots, and none of them were good. And none of them lasted. And I'm like, we're going to drive across almost 3,000 miles. And Ed's all, yep. I'm like, okay, let's do it. We hopped in, we put on our chic outfits, and off across the country we go. Now, very tame actual start, which I was surprised that we had the restraint. The first few legs, we actually weren't trying to go terribly fast because we're in an old Rolls-Royce. Our thought was, we'll go first, and people will pass us, and we'll take pictures of all the crazy guys blowing by us in their crazy cars. And that's what we'll do. And that'll be the fun thing, is you catch the Rolls-Royce and pass us, and we'll just kind of have a good old time going across. Well, the Rolls was relatively reliable and started going a little faster. Maybe a little faster. Maybe people weren't catching us anymore. And by the time we got halfway across the country, there's something that happens halfway across. And I think what Ed did his record run, when they got halfway across and they realized their time, they really went for it. And it was kind of the same thing. We're like, we're not doing too bad. We started picking up the pace into alleged speeds. A Rolls-Royce, I don't believe, was ever designed to get into, in Mexico, of course, triple digits. But when it does, if it did, allegedly, what happened at night was Ed was driving, and it's kind of weird to be the passenger in a right-hand drive car going quickly, because you instinctually start grabbing at the dashboard, because when things happen, you're the driver, right? You're here, and it took halfway across the country to get that out of your hands to kind of relax. So it's relaxing, the car's picking up speed, and the dome light starts turning on and off. And I'm thinking, oh, it's, of course, Lucas Electronics, right, or whatever. But it wasn't. Under a closer observation, the pressure inside the car was increasing with speed, and the doors were opening enough to get the switch that had the light to turn on, and then it would close. Because the light would go on and it would turn off. And it would what is going on? The car was insanely quiet and comfortable. So you didn't hear like rattling going on that would give you an indication. They just politely, in a very British way, just kind of opened, with a bit of whistling. and the light would come on and they'd go back. And it was right around, those speeds that it would happen. We were like, okay, well, I guess that's what it does. And there wasn't any fixing it or jamming towels in there. We just drove it. And the car ran beautifully. We had, I think, a loose lug nut. The center cap that covers, the dust cap that covers the bearing on the front came inside the hubcap, made some noise. It consumed quite a bit of fluids. If it had been sitting in one place, it might have made a mess, let's say. So we just spread that mess across 3,000 miles. A few quarts of oil, maybe a case, a few quarts of the special fluid for the hydraulic system, maybe a case of that as well. But you wouldn't know, other than pouring it in, that anything was happening. It ran smooth and quiet. Usually I have my sound canceling headphones in when I do the crossing to kind of keep, or earplugs in to kind of keep the vibration out. And you really didn't even need them in this car. Like, this was the most comfortable crossing I've ever made. And I would do it again. I'm like, if the Queen had to do a Cannonball, this was it. You just sat in that back seat with all the room and the cushion and the smells of a British car and Jeeves driving in the right-hand side. It was magnificent, absolutely magnificent. Now, why do I like a right-hand drive Rolls-Royce in this particular usage? Well, the reason is, and you don't think about this until you get a right-hand drive vehicle out on American highways, and you might be going at a certain clip of speed. But when you are in the passing lane, you're on the right-hand side and you can see through the cars. Now, traditionally, when you are speeding, not that we were speeding, you need the spotter on the right-hand side to look around trucks, to get through traffic. You don't need that person anymore. You are that person. Essentially, you're sitting on a two-lane, which is most of what we were running, two-lane highways. You're in the middle. You see everything you need. Everybody can go to sleep because you don't need a spotter, you don't need anything. It really changes it completely. And the rest of the time you're driving it, once you get used to it, you don't notice it. But driving, hustling through traffic, it is the ultimate weapon that nobody knows about. Now we start getting west and the speeds start picking up even more. And the rotation would be that I was in the back seat. I forget who was driving. I think Ed was driving, I was sleeping, or Trevor was in the front. I forget what the rotation was. And I remember being asleep and hearing like, a little faster. How fast are you going? I'm like, what's going on? And I kind of sit up, and allegedly, I may have seen on the GPS, I may have seen it, I may be wrong, 124 miles an hour in a Rolls-Royce, which I don't think was ever designed. I don't think the creators ever drove it that fast. I don't think there's enough room in England because you have to, it's a long way to get up to speed for that 6,000 pound car. But once it's moving, that inertia, let's keep going. And we trucked it across the western half. We came across New Mexico and Arizona and California. And we're like, you know what? We're doing this. Like, this is a real time. And we're going to beat quite a few cars, which I wholly expected to be last. And I was wholly content with that. But I don't think it's in Ed's DNA to be last. And I don't think it's all three of us' DNA. So it's just kind of like, maybe a little faster. And the farther you get across, the more comfortable you are pushing these cars. And I learned that in the 2904, is that if it made it halfway, odds are it's going to make it the rest of the way. We might as well hammer it home. And boy, did we hammer it home. You know, when you travel with Ed, you have some special things that happen. And one of them was we came in early in the morning. Ed makes a phone call. And he's all like, yeah, we're coming in. You give us a little bit of escort. And sure enough, a police officer, when we get off the freeway, appears ahead of us and leads us in down to the Portofino Hotel and flashes his lights maybe a couple of times across a couple of intersections. I'm not sure how that fits into the police code of that certain town, but I appreciate that officer's efforts. And we came in our chic outfits, in our Rolls-Royce, led in by a police escort into the Portofino. Truly my favorite entrance and finish ever of any of the Cannonballs I've ever done.
Hello, Sam Hart here from England. We're building a Rolls-Royce for SEMA. 2015, I was at SEMA after helping a guy called Slick from Highway to Sell build his SEMA car. I got to meet Steve Darnell from Welder Up, and me and Patrick Wilson and Brian DeGale and a guy called Jason Groks all stood in the parking lot at SEMA with Steve Darnell. And Steve Darnell is this rat rod guy, yeah? He's got like the iconic backstory of rat rods, right? And I'm some English nutter that's had far too much to drink with like a trench coat on. I look like England's epitome of what a young English man looks like, you know? Turn to Brian. It's like, man, there's no rat rods at SEMA. It's all new, shiny Trailer Queen, jacked up trucks, right? And we all decided there and then we should have a rat rod build off. I was like, yeah, no worries, you know? And I'd had rat rods built or designed. I've helped build and design cars in Juarez in Mexico at a place called Street Toys. And at this point I was like, I'm a Brit, I live in England, and I've just agreed to be in a rat rod build off at SEMA. So I've got like some hurdles to climb here. I've got like the lake between us both. We've got the fact that I don't have like a real build shop in the UK. I have to get the car into SEMA, and how the hell am I going to afford it? So, you know, I end up building a relationship with a guy called Jesse Gonzalez, like I said, at Street Toys. And I was like, hey, you want to build a car for SEMA? He's like, yeah. So it gets to the point where Michael Lightmore, my buddy in El Paso, is good friends with Jesse Gonzalez. And between me, my dad, Michael Lightborn, and Jesse Gonzalez, we come up with this idea, you know, of this Rolls-Royce. Mike's like, I know where there's a 1936 Rolls-Royce. It's like a 1380 or whatever it's called. It's like a full sedan car where this old guy's got it in a barn, hidden away from the world. He's like, it's been after that for a whole long time. Let me see if I can peel it away from him. He gets the Rolls-Royce. Tick. We got a car to start with. I then talked Jesse Gonzalez into, fancy like building it, I'll get the parts and everything I can, you build it, and when we sell it, we'll go three ways. Michael Lightbourne's going to put money in for car parts, we'll put money in as well for bits and pieces, plus I'll get parts for the car, and Jesse will build it. So Jesse and his team went above and beyond in like a real small amount of time to build this crazy Rolls-Royce, you know, I mean, open cab, chauffeured, like the chauffeured section was always open so that, you know, they weren't worried about burning their faces off in the heat or the elements to get them, you know, open cab. And then the back was full of like Mexican blankets, like crazy yellow tint windows. So like, you know, the sun would come in, it would just brighten the whole thing up. It was phenomenal. Michael Lightbourne, we were trying to get this engine donated, and things were getting harder and harder because the SEMA crunch catches up and you're like, what are we going to do? We need a motor, right? And he's got, well, I've got this LS6 and, you know, please correct me. Everyone will correct me in the comments below. But the LS6 was like, it was a 69 Camaro. It was like, not like the LS6, you know, nowadays, but, you know, the early LS6. He's like, I've been holding out for this forever. Like, I don't really want to use it. We end up managed to convince Michael to give us his LS6. We put that in, and he goes, Sam, we want Hilborn fuel injection. So I'm on the phone to Hilborn. Hello, Sam Hart here from England. We're building a Rolls-Royce for SEMA, and I'm going to tell you it's going to be the most talked about Rolls-Royce in the world for 2016. I convinced them to give me like the thing it cost. It was like real cheap, but you know, they're a small company. You can't expect them just to give stuff away. That's how they don't survive. We get the Hilborn fuel injection. Once again, Jesse makes these bad freaking snorkels, like, you know, the exhaust pipe, but for the intake, like little bear's paws. Absolutely amazing. And we built it 2 weeks before the car was due at SEMA. Me and my dad flew out. We helped out for no money, laying on the floor in his workshop, sleeping like on a piece of wood or whatever, me and my dad, for 2 weeks straight, just helping finish it off. I mean, in no way, shape or form did we build the car, but we helped the snag list at the end and we got it done. We got it to Vegas and it was just mind-blowing, you know. But the worst thing of all was once we got it to Vegas, we finally got the paperwork through for the car. Turned out it was owned by Lord Tredegar, who was like a really famous guy, and he was friends with the Queen, with Hitler, all these kind of people back in the 30s, and we cut his car up. It's pretty cool. So yeah, it kind of leads us on to the story of when we sold the Rolls as well, because we're all in it deep. I mean, that thing is a work of art. You know, that's the one that got away, is the Rolls-Royce. That's the one car that we shouldn't have sold, but life gets in the way, right? Well, Michael's good friends with Dana from Mecum, and he said, look, we'll put it through for you. And I was like, okay, no worries. It went to auction, and I drove it across the block. I think it was kind of the worst experience of my life, because Michael is this guy where he's a hemophiliac, but he's one of the best car finders in the world. He finds loads of cars for like the guys that own In-N-Out Burger, and he found like the Ed Roth's Orbitron. That went to Bo Bachman. That went to Bo. So he buys cars for Bo. He finds the most crazy cars all around the world. And Michael's like, look, we're all in it deep. We're all broke. Let's just dump it. Michael's phrase, which if you ever meet him and get to deal with him with cars, like, let's dump this piece of shit. That's what he says, right? So I'm in love with it. It's my dream car. My dad's in love with it. Jesse Gonzalez in Mexico by this point hates it because like it owes him money. It's taken money and time away from his workshop. Michael's in it. He's burnt out. He loves the cars, but he doesn't love to keep them, you know, so the cars have got to go. So I'm sat in it, going across the block, thinking it's going to make like 50, 60 grand. I think it made like 24 grand. Like, we dumped it, you know, like completely dumped it. And it was like the most soul-destroying, horrible feeling in the world, you know? But then we wouldn't have what we got now in life if we didn't get rid of stuff. And that's what Richard Rawlins told me once in my life. It's the only phrase he told me: don't ever hold on to anything. Don't ever worry you won't get it again. Because if you don't sell it today, you won't have the money to buy cool in the future. And that's the most important thing, is never holding on to stuff. If the money's there, let it go. The Rolls was a bit of a strange thing to do, really, because you got people like Steve Darnell that are saying a rat rod is this. It's rusty, it's bare metal, it's used, made with recycled parts. So we made this Rolls rat rod, which Michael come up with some amazing ideas. I got some parts and Jesse put this thing together. And it's like an English version of a rat rod, right? We got no bare steel that can corrode and rust, so we polished the thing, right? We're using the original radiator was brass. So we melted down the radiator and made it into a DeVore windshield. Yeah, so we're recycling. We got the original seat covers in the front of the vehicle. We're using the original steering box. We're using everything on it is basically original, apart from the firewall and the chassis rails. The whole thing is custom. But when people like Steve Darnell turn up and go, "You kind of threw the rule book out the window, didn't you, buddy?" I was like, well, we are British. Come on, we seem to mess up everything and then walk away in style, it's fine. Steve's like, this is crazy. He got in the car, took some pictures. The Diesel brothers were like, can we get a picture in it? They jumped in. It was just absolutely off the rails. And people were just walking up. And whether they loved it or they hated it, they were still talking about it. And they were still taking pictures of it, Gene Winfield, what hell of an idol for me. Gets down on his knees, opens his bag, gets his camera out, and is walking around taking pictures, right? And his wife was like, we've been at SEMA for 2 days, and he does not get his camera out. Like, he'll take pictures with everyone, but he does not get his camera out for anyone. And, George Barris passed away that year, I believe, 16, I could be wrong, 15, 16, and his son were there, and they got pictures in the car, and it was just an absolute mind-blowing door opening session for the rest of my life. That's basically how I'd express how crazy SEMA is, The funny thing was, that year there was a guy called Jason Groks out of Canada. There was me from, we were called the Mexicans, because it's Mexican, the UK, and the Americans. We were called the Mexicans. And then there was a guy called Carl who used to work on Steve Darnell's show. It boiled down to what was a rat rod. It was a rat rod build-off, And Brian DeGaulle, who runs it, he's an absolute legend from the US and Canada, and they're all from everywhere. And it basically boiled down to all the judges, including Steve Darnell, picked Jason Groks. Stuff in life happens for a reason, all right? So he won. Everyone was gutted. Brian got a lot of shit from a lot of people for the Rolls not winning, right? And the next year they changed it to the Radical rod drive-off, because now there's no rules. It doesn't have to be ratty. It can be painted. It can be whatever you want it to be, as long as you get it driven to SEMA, it has a booth space, and you drive it there. You can't pay someone to drive it. That's the deal, right? So the whole reason it's now called the Radical rod drive-off is because I messed it up by building the Rolls-Royce with my team members all across the world. Turns out, later on that year, Jason Groks was out on the Canadian lake with his girl and their kid, and it was a nice sunny day. They're out on the lake. Storm came in, and he took his life jacket off, gave it to his girl and their kid, and he died. So he went out of this world with the most overwhelming trophy that basically summed up his life. Bad guy, gave his life for the right reasons. And, we go on every year remembering him and what he put into it when all four of us stood there in 2015. And the three founders are still here now, and I bought my car this year. And, but it gives me the tingles right up my spine just to think that He won that reason for a year. It was meant to be. And, you know, any feelings that you have that you didn't win or we were gutted or whatever, it was just an overwhelming feeling that he won and he deserved it, and things all fall into place sometimes, you know?
What ended up happening was they ended up strapping explosives to the front suspension. So when I worked for BMW corporate circa 2010-ish, we dealt with a little bit of everything, right? So a little bit of Mini, a little bit of BMW, a little bit of Motorrad sometimes, McLaren maybe. And this time the issue was actually with Rolls-Royce, which is kind of rare because you don't always have an issue with Rolls-Royce, and you don't always have an issue with Rolls-Royce that involves Rick Ross. So this is kind of twofold. So first, we at one point or another actually repossessed Rick Ross's Phantom. Okay, so we repossessed the Phantom. And the reason being was there was some issues with the car that we couldn't resolve. So there was, I don't know the details of it, but it couldn't get resolved. There was some kind of an issue that wasn't quite a buyback, but the car wasn't right. So Mr. Ross stopped paying his payment. And at one point we repossessed the car. So obviously this caused some bad press for everyone. So we ended up coming to an agreement. I'm sure there was some shrewd negotiating that went down. And he got himself a brand new Ghost. That's what they ended up getting. He went from a Phantom to a Ghost, and he was assured that he would not have problems. And he assured us that he would be paying his payment. And what ended up happening was, it was probably like a week or two after this whole thing got settled. So he got his car, and I know the person in customer service who took care of this worked closely with Rick Ross's team. Lots of nights of sleep were lost here, okay? A lot of work went into this. And about a week or two later, we come to find out that there was a drive-by shooting, and that same car that we just gave to Rick Ross was just shot up. Phantoms, I think, were pretty good for the most part. I think the issues they really had was based on the nature of the car. They're extremely customizable. So, I mean, you've seen some wild shit. Like, I mean, some stuff was too much, right? Problem is, when said component is damaged, especially an interior component, it's not that fast. So there's no way of making that person happy. It's going to take a long time to get. And I mean, they're pretty good about it, right? It could be worse. You could be like McLaren, taking forever to get you certain. That's the facts. That's what it is. But try telling a Rolls-Royce customer they have to wait 2 months for a new door panel and they can't use their car. And sorry, we don't have a loaner for you because we don't do that. So some of the components that were more commonly than you'd like to think, warranted or even paid for in cash by many customers, were the headliners. And it's not like there was a physical defect or a technical defect with the headliners. They just had a lot of problems with random holes getting put in the headliners. From my experience, or from what I heard, I don't want to say my experience, it could be potentially due to women's shoes going through the headliner. So you can imagine how quickly these customers would want their headliners to be fixed before their wives would potentially hear about this repair within the dealership. I think a lot of cash deals were done at dealers for headliners over the years. A popular option at the time was these Starlight headliners. And I don't even want to speculate how much the price could possibly have been for these things, but nobody ever argued. I spent about a year working at Volkswagen. And at the time, I was an engineer and I was doing on-site technical development or technical support, I would say, for movies, press events and things like that. So I was pretty excited when this small-known movie series called Jason Bourne was filming in New York City, and I was tasked to be on set to help out with them crashing a Touareg. That was a sponsored thing. So if you go back and when that movie came out, it was around the time that the Touareg 2 came out. It was like this whole marketing campaign around it. So Volkswagen was heavily sponsored in it. The next Bourne movie, if you pay attention, they were in there as well. Just not as, they weren't really the hero car anymore. There was a bunch of Beatles on a train, and the crane kept knocking the Beatles off the train. If you remember that scene in the movie, that's by design. They didn't randomly have 10 Beatles on the train. That's sponsored stuff, right, in movies. They were heavily invested in it that first time. I think even if you bought the box set from the movie at the time, they had like a box set. It was called like the Touareg set or whatever. Volkswagen dealers were giving out the movie when you bought a car. You bought a car, you get it on DVD. So they were heavily invested into it. So as you can imagine, they supplied cars, and obviously they supplied support as well to make sure that somebody was there to represent the car for what it could and couldn't do and offer technical directions. So that's what I was there for. This was a fun truck that we actually gave them. It didn't exist in the US. This was a 6-speed diesel manual transmission Touareg. And essentially for movies, it doesn't matter, right? So as long as the car has a look, nothing else really matters. And a lot of times OEMs will give you cars that they're about to crush, right? They don't want to give you perfect cars either because there's budgets for these kinds of things, right? Unless it's a hero car, not really a crash car. So there was a slight oversight with this, and this car actually had air suspension. And the movie company wanted a steel suspension because they needed it to do a certain thing when they crashed the car. Essentially, they're talking about what they wanted to do, and I'm arguing with them saying, I need to call my boss, you can't do this, right? Because they were essentially gonna try doing something with the suspension. I tried doing what I had to do with it because at the time I was technically there for that. So I was trying to code the car to have it do what they asked for it to do. What ended up happening was they ended up strapping explosives to the front suspension because they needed the car to dip when it hit this embankment. Okay, they wanted it to dip before it hit the embankment. And the problem with that is when you have air suspension, there's nothing you could do to have it dip and stay there. So instead of them asking for another car, which we couldn't give them anyway with steel suspension, they opted to blow up the air suspension and crash the car into the wall. Now, to this day, if you watch that movie, they never edited the plume of smoke out. So right before that truck hits the wall, watch the movie again and watch, you'll see a little plume of smoke coming from the bottom of the wheel well, and that's what that is. The reason why they wanted it to drop was the size of the barriers. So the height of the barrier that it was hitting, if it wasn't lower when it actually hit the barrier, they were scared the car was actually gonna flip over the barrier. So they wanted it to dip down. And I guess the shot, like the look that they were going for from the side, because that's really, if you go back and look at that shot, that's how it was shot. It was shot from the side when the actual impact happened. So I think part of it was that, like maybe they didn't want it to go over the barrier, because if you saw this live, you would not believe how they did it. There was no tethering of this car. So essentially they were using a similar thing of what I saw in Fast and Furious, one of the sets that they did for that, where it was, it's like a remote control that they used. That's all it was. They just drove this thing into a wall. So there was no tethering. So if this thing would have went over, it could have very easily went over. So they basically just remote controlled the car into a wall. They kept testing it, right? So to see where the distance was to get the shot. And when you hit the brakes, the suspension was correcting too fast, right? So they couldn't control what was gonna happen when it actually hit the wall, because the car doesn't know that it's about to hit a wall, right? So it'll dip, it's at the wrong height, and maybe that could happen, right? It could flip over the wall. So that's basically what they wanted. It was actually amazing because there was so much other shit, right? There was like a fight going on and all that stuff. Never actually got to see the main actors, right? It was all stunt actors on set, so you'd be surprised how that stuff works. That whole thing was like 12 hours of like 2 seconds, which was interesting. So if you guys have never been on a movie set, it's quite incredible. And you start to understand why stuff costs as much as it does to do on a movie set. Because basically I was there for 12 hours and I assure you there was a lot. I was there, I'm random if you think about it, besides all the movie people that are doing what they're doing. And that was literally 3 seconds in the shot, right? So it really gets you thinking there. But it's just really incredible to see that kind of stuff, you know? I mean, seeing production is one thing, but that's something in its own level. It was definitely a cool car. I think if they would have brought that here, they would have probably done really well with it. Because they had, what did they have? They had the V10, they had a diesel. That was one of the earlier cars that they brought over as a diesel, but it was a big engine diesel. If they would have brought over that V6 diesel with a manual transmission, I mean, I don't know if America was ready for it yet, but they're definitely ready for it now. They'll be all over it now. So that was definitely a unique car to see. I've always gone to Europe a lot, so nothing's really surprised me. Like if you go to different countries, you see different versions of cars that'll surprise you, especially mainstream cars. So, but it was definitely a cool car to see. I remember on set, people were questioning it. They're like, is there something wrong with this? Because of the way it sounded. It's pretty quiet diesel, but it still sounds like something's wrong with it, right? So they weren't even used to it, but that was a cool car. That was a cool car.
The Wraith is stolen. I said, 100% understood. Got off the phone and I'm just like, so how's it driving? I worked at Motor Cars of Georgia, Motor Cars of Atlanta, which is an authorized Rolls-Royce dealer, and sold many Rolls over the course of the 4 years that I worked there. And naturally, when I went to go work for an independent store shortly after, I took a lot of that business with me. This is the story of the infamous Travis Barker's stolen Rolls-Royce black badge. Supposedly, this car was originally ordered by him. I acquired it after leaving Motor Cars at the small independent boutique store that I worked for a time. And beautiful car. It was diamond black exterior with tailored purple interior. Just an amazing specification. And of course, with black badge, you get a little bump in power. There's the wheels have the carbon fiber barrels on them. It looks really, really nice. It even comes with a little sports exhaust. So if you look through the tailpipes of a black badge, you'll actually see 3 individual pipes. And when you press on the stalk, I believe I can't remember the exact name, but it's the little button right there. It's kind of Rolls-Royce's sport mode. You'll hear a little bit more of what they call a baritone sound, but pretty cool car. So I was contacted by this customer that had a huge collection, and in his fleet, he had 3 Rolls-Royces, one of which was a 2014 Rolls-Royce Wraith. I believe he had a early generation Phantom and a Dawn as well. And we ended up having a Rolls-Royce Phantom Coupe drop head in, I want to say, ensign red. Had the nice brushed stainless hood, pretty wild configuration. Loaded MSRP is probably $550,000 new, and even had the Vogue, or I guess what they call the Zenith tires on it. We also had this ex-Travis Barker Rolls-Royce Wraith. So he traded in this 2014 Wraith that he had, kind of a burgundy color, and actually bought both of these cars. And it was the point where the truck driver had showed up to deliver the cars to his residence, where I actually had another client come in looking at a 2018 Porsche 911 Turbo S cab. Night blue metallic over, I believe, espresso cognac. Beautiful car. And I didn't have time. What I normally would do is go out to the truck, take photos or videos of the cars getting loaded up, send them to the client, say, hey, here's your baby getting loaded up, etc. But we did have some other staff at the time that greeted the truck drivers. There was actually 2 of them, and said, hey, do you need any help? No, we got it, no big deal. They signed the bill of lading, which of course at that point in time releases all liability from the dealer and puts it on the transportation company. Meanwhile, I'm out on a test drive, and things are going great, and my phone is just ringing in my pocket. And finally, I go to answer it, and it was the owner of my dealership going, Grant, the black badge is stolen. And the customer's driving the car next to me, and and I said, hey, excuse me, let me take this call. And I'm over there, and I'm going, okay, yes, sir, absolutely, trying to keep my composure. And he's coming back at me. No, Grant, the Wraith is stolen. I said, 100% understood. And so got off the phone, and I'm just like, so how's it driving? And everything is great. And got back to the store, cops are there, and this customer's ready to buy this Porsche 911 Turbo S cab. So while I'm doing the paperwork, my owner's speaking with the cops about the situation, and he goes, hey, what's going on? And I go, oh, I think one of the cars got missing. He goes, stolen? I said, possibly. He ended up being a happy customer and drove off in his 911 Turbo S. But all the while, what we had found out was there was this Mercedes CLA that was sort of canvassing the area. And at this time, and I think still today, Buckhead has had a huge surge in automotive-related thefts. They just waited for the right opportunity. And here are these 2 guys with this reputable transportation company. They're loading up both of these cars. And I guess in the moment where they both had their backs turned, the white Mercedes CLA pulls up. One guy hops out, gets in the black badge Wraith. Keys are in it, car's running behind the truck, and just simply drives off. And still to this day, we don't know where the car is. It's probably shipped overseas or in a chop shop or somewhere, but it never reappeared. At the end of the day, the customer was pretty upset about the matter, but we did the right thing and refunded his money back. And after we did that, he goes, hey, you handled that with grace. I still want a black badge. And months later, we ended up finding him an even nicer, I believe it was a 455 MSRP black badge that he now owns today. And then, of course, the transportation company, after months and months of going back and forth, ended up paying out a little bit less than what my owner had the car for. But, at the end of the day, everybody was happy. The trucking company did not immediately accept liability. That discussion was not by me, but with my owner and the transportation company, and it was very intense back and forth. There was all kinds of legal threats, I guess you could say, and the attempt to tarnish one's business over this thing, because I get it. At the end of the day, my owner was out $350,000, and that's not a really good position to be in. You have to make the customer happy, but you also expect the company that assumes liability at the point of signing off on the bill of lading to do what they're supposed to do. But of course, large companies, they've got huge legal teams. They can take a while, and essentially just that process had to play out.
So one of my most embarrassing, I would say, fiascos of my early career was I was trying to orchestrate a deal between Lil Wayne, Birdman, and the rest of Cash Money with Rolls-Royce. So right around the time when Lil Wayne started to become famous, I think this was right around the moment the song Lollipop came out. Cash Money Records had just sold, I think, to Universal for $200 million. And it was a big thing in the music world because it was probably one of the largest transactions at that point. And the guys from Cash Money Records, they always had these insane cars in all their videos. They had Diablos doing donuts and, all these insane things. And it was sort of well known that, Birdman and Lil Wayne, they always had different cars and all these wacky cars. And they had moved from Louisiana into Miami. And I had been introduced to them through some mutual friends. And it was sort of, not to get starstruck, but it was sort of cool to potentially be working with these guys. And I, was going to figure out how to help them in any way I can. And this was after sort of my car show period. And I was just starting a little small dealership. But I had great contacts in the industry. And one of those contacts was at the time the head of marketing for Rolls-Royce Corporate. And a really sincere guy, great person. He's always like, if I can help you in any way or if you have any clients. So I had gotten a phone call from one of the managers at Cash Money, and he said, hey, I'd like to set up a dinner. They're looking for someone to help them get them special cars. We're doing an MTV series where the MTV series is going to follow Lil Wayne for his birthday. And Birdman, the rapper, who's one of the owners of Cash Money, would like to give a Rolls-Royce or something to Lil Wayne for his birthday. But he wants something special, and maybe he can orchestrate a deal. So this was in a point right after 2008 when, 2010, 2011, Rolls-Royces probably weren't moving. And listen, the reality was there's probably a lot of money back. I don't know the exact amount. And I made a call to corporate, and I said, there might be something cool here. There's this, up-and-coming rapper. I mean, he's big already, but he's about to go into a whole different level. And he just moved to Miami. You've got a store in Miami. Maybe we can get them some special Phantom or something cool for this TV show. He says, wow, we just had these cars out of the New York Auto Show. They've got all these special features. They're really special cars, and we can do an incredible deal for them if they take two. So I reached out to the guys, and it was funny, we ended up doing dinner, Prime 112, and I'm there, and, could barely afford dinner at Prime 112 at that time. And they're just, we're all hanging out, and it was sort of an odd situation. It's not like I had that much in common with up-and-coming rappers, but I was, trying to explain the car world a little bit to them. And they basically agreed that night. They said, well, listen, if we can get a deal on 3, we'll take 3 cars. Let's get them delivered to Miami. Let's get them on camera. We'll take delivery at the birthday party on camera. I'm like, wow, this is so cool that I'm going to be able to orchestrate this. I don't even care what I make. It's more than I had yesterday, and I'm going to be part of this scene. So I call my guy from Rolls-Royce, and he says, Ben, incredible. I will give you guys a killer deal. I have 3 show cars. I'll get them on trucks. I'll get them shipped to Miami. I'll fly in. I'll have another one of my execs fly in, and let's do a big unveil. Amazing. So they get the cars in the trucks. They start to put some paperwork together. I don't remember the name of the GM at Bremen, which is the Rolls-Royce dealer in Miami, but a really sweet guy. And I met with him, and he said, okay, let me start getting paperwork together. And it was like 2 days away from this birthday party. And they're planning to do a massive birthday party on one of those, like, I'm going to call it a cheesy. It's not a yacht. It's like a party boat that looks somewhat like a yacht, but it's really for bar mitzvahs and things like that. Ends up, they're planning for this birthday party. Everything's aligned. They're going to film the delivery of the cars. They all show up, and I'll never forget this. They showed up in, I think it was dark blue Escalades. It was like 2 or 3 dark blue Escalades, and everybody's there, and you got the rappers, and there's probably marijuana just everywhere. I mean, everything smelled like marijuana. At that moment, I'm like super excited, and I see a little nervousness going on between executive producers of like Cash Money Records, and I see like the Rolls-Royce guys are a little nervous, and there's not really like a handover happening. And apparently, the main guy, his nickname was Slim at Cash Money Records, did not want to sign for the cars at that moment. He wanted to actually like renegotiate them or finance them or do something different. So I was like, okay, no worries, we'll figure this out. You know, we'll still get the cars somehow over to the boat. We'll orchestrate this. Everyone should relax. And then the guys at Rolls-Royce were like, no, we'll handle it. Don't worry, we'll figure it out. So they were actually very understanding. The original meeting was basically going to be a delivery scene filmed by MTV at Bremen, the Rolls-Royce dealer in Miami. And that's sort of when the deal sort of blew up. I guess they weren't going to sign paperwork there, or something was not going to happen at that moment. And I think the Rolls-Royce guys were okay with me not being involved at that moment, and they somehow agreed, after all this, to actually bring the cars to the party. So it was probably a little awkward at that moment, and, you know, I guess it was great for MTV, great for the filming. I get a call the next day, and I'm told that they're not taking the cars, and that they wanted, like, even a better deal, and they wanted to, like, special financing and all this stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, I just committed the head of Rolls-Royce to fly in, get this all on film, chauffeur these cars around a little bit, and ship these show cars from all over the country. And I felt so stupid. Now, I will say, in retrospect, I ended up going to the birthday party. I was actually on the boat, and it was pretty wild. I mean, being a kid of the late 90s, early 2000s, I literally saw every famous rapper imaginable. I mean, the who's of A-list rappers were all there at that moment. So it was definitely an incredible experience. But at the same time, the embarrassment I felt when I had them shuffle all these cars, they thought we were doing this massive deal. And in the end, the guys backed out. I felt incredibly stupid. Having dealt with, you know, now in retrospect, all types of entertainers, rappers, you name it, this is sort of not uncommon. I mean, these guys are, they're artists at the end of the day, and they've got people that are managing their money and people managing their other things. But the guys at Rolls-Royce Corporate never spoke to me again. So around the same time, which is sort of funny, the Gallardo that I blew up, Ed's Gallardo, the yellow car, was actually rented by MTV to potentially give to Soulja Boy for his birthday. Apparently they were filming rappers' birthdays at the time. And it was supposed to be a gift to him, or a staged gift to him. And I guess they felt like it was probably a bad look, and they ended up just leaving the car in the parking lot and not using it at all. But it's probably a common thing in the industry to sort of, show some appearance or show something happening when in reality it doesn't.
Where's the car? And he goes, he never got the car. And just my heart just sunk. I was like, oh no, this isn't happening to me. There's no way. On July 1st, 2024, my car was stolen through the widely known Central Dispatch double brokering scam. I posted my car to go from Arizona to Atlanta. I got a call from a company. This was on a Thursday, and they told me that we can pick it up Friday and drop it off Monday night, maybe Tuesday, which is it's about right, from Scottsdale to Atlanta. I said, oh, okay, no problem. The car was picked up the next day. I'm just thinking, okay, great, car's on the way. Monday night comes around, haven't heard anything. That's not abnormal. They don't usually call us or provide updates unless there's a problem, so I didn't think anything of it. And then Tuesday rolls around, and I remember it was about, halfway through the day, and I'm just like, that's kind of weird. Car should have been here by now. So I start calling the transporter, and this company, they were called Ayler Transportation LLC. That's the name they were under. And I start calling, and the guy's picking up the phone pretty much every time, but he's like, oh, hold on, let me call my driver. I'll call you right back. Let me call my driver. I'm like, eventually I got frustrated. I was like, well, dude, where's the car? Like, what's going on? He goes, oh, the driver's in the hospital. And I'm like, sorry, but I don't really care. Like, you could have told me this earlier. I could have set up another transport. Where's the car? And he goes, he never got the car. And just my heart just sunk. I was like, oh no, this isn't happening to me. There's no way. I started doing some research, and I call the dealer, the seller I got it from, and I was like, hey, that car got picked up, right? Because they told me to. They're like, yeah, last Saturday. I'm like, you sure? And they're like, oh yeah, here. And they sent me the bill of lading. The document that, whenever transport picks up the car, the person releasing the car signs, the driver signs for the condition of it. And then when the car gets delivered, they delivery signature on there too. But, the seller sent me a picture of the pickup. And I look at the bill of lading and the transport company on there, I've never heard of them in my whole life. But even worse, the receiver, my company name, my name, our address in Georgia, it had no name, no company name, and a Los Angeles address, 5858 Van Nuys Boulevard. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, there's a California phone number on there. I start calling that California phone number. No one's answering. Now I look up the place where it is. It's like a whole row. Every thing on that street is dealerships, Van Nuys Boulevard. And I looked it up. It's like Keys, Lexus, just everything. And I called the store that it was in front of, and I'm like, hey, did you guys get a Rolls-Royce Conan delivered or something? They're like, no, but you're not the first person to call us. There was a Ferrari, Mercedes, a couple Bentleys. And I'm like, what do you mean they called? And they're like, well, they said that their cars were dropped off here, but we don't know anything about it. We don't have those cars. And I was like, what? So I called the carrier that said they picked it up on the bill of lading. And I'm like, hey, did you guys pick up my car? And they're like, your car? We were dispatched this car by a different company. I was like, what company? They said Deep South Freight and Logistics. I'm like, I've never heard of them. I'm like, they're a broker on Central? Like, yeah. I'm like, okay. And who'd you deliver the car to? And they said, well, there's a guy named Mike and another guy that we don't remember his name, but they walked up and met the car early Sunday morning, like 9 o'clock in the morning. They just walked up off the street. And I'm like, and you gave it to them? And they're like, well, yeah, they had the phone number on the sheet. So I'm just like, I'm frustrated, but at the same, I'm like, I mean, that's kind of what they're paid to do. I wish they had got IDs from them, but I mean, whatever. I start calling those phone numbers over and over and over again because, I'm just like, who has my car? And I finally get a response because I texted that this one, I know the car's stolen, right? And I start texting the number. And I'm like, listen, I know you stole my car. Just where is it? Drop this, no police, nothing. I just want the car back. And obviously I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And the guy texted me back and he said, nice car, motherfucker. Okay, this is gonna be fun. I thought I'd find it quick, but no, couldn't get a trace of anything. The tracker was unplugged immediately. So we actually, later on, we had subpoenaed AT&T to get because the car has a built-in Wi-Fi hotspot. It pings a cell tower like every 60 minutes or something. And it turns out that the last time it pinged was like 15, 20 minutes after the car was stolen. And it was only like 5-6 miles away. It was in a grocery store parking lot. No GPS location, nothing. That's when I start talking to other people because they said there were other cars that were dropped off at that same location. So I start digging and finding out, okay, who else got screwed? Who else did this happen to? Maybe they'll have some more information. And I talked to them and they all said the same thing happened. This company, Deep South Freight and Logistics. I'm like, who is Deep South Freight? So I looked them up and on Central, and they're fairly new, but they only have like 5 or 6 reviews. They're all 5 stars, but all their reviews are from Ayler Transportation, the company that initially called me to take my load that I booked it with. So then I look on Ayler's reviews and it's all Deep South Freight. So I'm like, are these the same people? And then I look on some of their different listings and some of the dispatch sheets of other people, and they had the same phone numbers. So I'm like, these are the same people. And I'm like, okay, so that's how they're doing this. Ayler takes it, and then they log out because now they have what they need. They have the pickup address and they have the vehicle information. They log out, log in under Deep South Freight, and then Deep South Freight posts the load on a load board. Only difference is they change where it's going, which in this case, most of these guys were going to LA. I mean, that's how they were doing it. It happened to all of us, and no one could figure out because most people think that the transport drivers, like the people with the trailers, are stealing the car. No, they're not. They're not. They are innocent. They're dropping them off because they're paid to do it. They're contracted by a company on Central, and that's it. Now, there have been some that were smart that got there, realized something was up, and started like backtracking and called dealers and stuff going, hey, this don't feel right. And some people got lucky, but I didn't. Nor did anybody else that was associated with mine. So the next few days, weeks, I started just looking in and trying to figure out, where I could find this car. Police couldn't help me at all. Nothing was happening. And that's when I started trying to chase down other cars that were stolen by them, because I thought that, if I find another one, I'll find where they had this big. In my head, I'm thinking there's this big warehouse just full of all these cars. There wasn't, but I had to try. So that's when we recovered the G-Wagon, the Rolls-Royce, and McLaren, Blue Urus, and then we prevented on that one, the Rolls-Royce Dawn, the one that was at the Federal impound lot. I just kept looking into it. Then the trail went cold around August. We didn't really hear anything after that. And I kind of stopped looking into it as much, just because at this point I was like, dude, I'm not going to find this thing. I kind of chill out for a little while. And then it was about the first, I want to say it was the last week of October, first week of November. I get a message on Instagram. And keep in mind, when this first happened, I posted it everywhere. Stolen Conan, pictures of it, pictures of the interior, because the interior is really easy to recognize. It's Arctic white, and it has the red stitching, like, so the R's are red, and then like on the seats it has like black paneling, right? I haven't seen that many with it, maybe 3 or 4 total. So chances are, if someone noticed that interior and it was in LA and it was a black car, it was probably mine. So I get a message on Instagram. This guy goes, hey, I found your car. And I was like, oh, this is bullshit. Here we go. And then he sends me a picture of, first he blacks out the person that's in it, but it's this girl that's like posing in the back of it. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's the car. And I'm like, who is it? And he was like kind of scared to tell me at first, but I got him to eventually. And he's like, please don't tell me. I was like, dude, I just want the car. I don't know who you are. So he sends me, this girl's name and her Instagram. And then I go on there and I find out that, she has a boyfriend that does like that whole exotic rentals thing or whatever. And I was like, well, this looks pretty sketchy. So I'm like, okay, let me make sure this is my car. So I start looking through the pictures and the videos and the stories. I was like 99% sure, but I still couldn't prove it. I was like, I don't know. And then I started calling around and asking people, I was like, hey, with the Rolls-Royce, do the headliners, like the Starlight headliners, are they ever the same? And everyone told me no. They're like a fingerprint, like no two are ever the same. So I took a picture of the car before it was stolen that I knew was my car, and I put it next to the one of the girl. And she was sitting right underneath the handle, in the back. And up there, you can see these 2 little bright stars. Here's the handle, here are these 2 little bright stars, and they're identical. And I was like, yeah, that's the car. And I started matching up all the other, I even had like drawings where I'd like do lines through them and like all these crazy constellations. And I was like, yeah, that's definitely the car. So at that point, I focused everything I could on trying to figure out who they were and, where they were, where the car could be. And, it turns out the guy who had the car, supposedly, he had just rented it for a day from one of his buddies. Of course, he didn't want to tell me who his buddy was, then he stopped really talking to anybody because I had a couple people reach out to him. I reached out to him. It didn't go so well. And then all of a sudden, I get a TikTok sent to me of this guy that was walking around. It was playing mariachi music, and Conan was right there, but it was white. Because at first I was like, no, that's not my car. But then I saw the interior, and I was like, and then I looked, the mirrors are still black. The parking sensors are still black. The grill's still black. The badge still. I'm like, this might be the car. And they changed the wheels too. They had Forgiato, the Travis Scott ones. They kind of look like dishes, like no spokes or anything. But they had changed those too, and they put these cheaper wheels on there. And I was like, man, that might be the car. So I watched the video and went through it, and I saw the Starlight headliner, matched it up again. I was like, damn it, that is the car. So I started trying to find out everything on him. I've got some information from some people that he may not be one to mess with. I'll kind of leave it at that. But I do know that he was associated with a dealership in Mexico called Alvarez Exotics. And I know this because he had one of his other personal cars had a Alvarez Exotics logo on it, and also had the Canelo logo. He's a famous Mexican boxer. All that, Alvarez Exotics, that's his family's dealership. His name is Saul Canelo Alvarez, I believe is his full name. And I knew this guy who had my car in LA was associated with that. But from what I knew, my car was still in LA, because the video, I was able to take the pictures, of the screenshots of it, and I was able to place exactly where it was, and I found where his house was and everything. Police, they said that they drove by, didn't see the car. I don't know if they did or not. I don't know. I mean, they could have, maybe not. I knew that he was associated with this dealership in Mexico, but I didn't really think the car was going to end up in Mexico. I mean, this is kind of stuff you hear about in, movies. Like, I really didn't think it would happen to me. I thought eventually someone would get pulled over in LA and I'd get it back. But no, 2 weeks later, Alvarez Exotics posts Conan sold on their Instagram. And I go through the pictures, same thing, stars in the headliner, that's it. That's the one. They didn't have any information on there. They don't have a real website either. They're a dealership that sells exotic cars. Like they have Uruses, they have STO on there, all kinds of stuff. Like it looks nice. Like the picture of the place looks really nice. It's in Guadalajara. Where's your website? If you're selling cars, I don't know how you're marketing that without internet, like a website, but whatever. We start calling down there just at hopes of maybe they'll do the right, they had to try. And at first they said, no, that's not our car. That's not our car. It is your car. It's at your dealership. It has your logo. Like they did the little vinyl thing on the back that dealerships do. Said, Alvarez, your logo's on there. And all your employees are posting it on their TikToks and their Instagrams. Like y'all have the car. And they're like, oh, well, we bought it from someone, and I'm having to use a translator. So that kind of doesn't help either. But they basically told me that, yeah, we bought it from someone and it's sold now. It's not on the lot anymore. And I'm like, well, that car is stolen. And I'm certain it's been VIN swapped. But if you plug in a computer to that, ECU, like it's going to show the real VIN. If you plug it in, like any kind of scanner will. And at first they were like cooperative. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, we'll support you and we'll hook it up and, we'll call back tonight and we'll figure this out. Well, that night we call back and it's totally different tone. I'm like, you don't know who, what you're talking about. We don't know who you are. You're trying to scam us. Like, how do we know it's your car? And I'm like, energy changed, right? So, we're like, look, no, this is our car. And we're going to send you the VIN number. We send them a picture of the title. Like, this is what the VIN number you will find in the computer will be. And they agreed that if they found it, when they said they were going to scan it, that if it was right, they were going to send us video proof, if it was or wasn't. Well, then they never did that. And then they completely ghosted us. And that was it. We tried to get a hold of them again. Nothing. They took the post down off Instagram like immediately. There's still some videos of it on their employee stuff though. But they tried to just wash their hands of it. And now one of their customers has been posting it. He's a Luis. I'm going to pronounce this wrong, but Luis Conriquez. He seems like a pretty famous Mexican singer. He's posting it it's on his Instagram story right now. He was riding around drinking champagne in the back of it last night after his concert. Man, he's, got tons of selfies with Canelo and Canelo's brother and at the dealership. I mean, they're obviously all friends, but, and I tried to, before I even told the story, this is the first time I've told this out loud to anybody. I tried to contact a lawyer that works for Canelo, but I got no cooperation. All I got was, you don't know it's your car. Or how do you? I'm telling you everything. I know I wouldn't be making accusations if I didn't do my research. Didn't just see a picture of some seats in a car in a different country and just assume it's mine because I want it to be. I don't want my car to be in Mexico. Promise. I want it to be here. It'd be a lot easier, but that's kind of where we're at now.